Over the years, I have heard time and time again that Silent Hill 2 is not only the best Silent Hill game, but also one of the best horror games ever made. As a lover of horror games, as you can see by this channel, this definitely piqued my interest. And having never actually played this before, nor having known anything about Silent Hill 2, I had to see it for myself. I mean, if I'm being honest, that singular question is the reason alone why I wanted to do this Silent Hill series in the first place. Seeing how this game evolves, and more importantly, how a game that came out 22 years ago has had such an impact on people and the genre as a whole, continuing with much debate to this day. Continuing our dive into the horror series that is Silent Hill, we come to what I have seen as arguably the peak of the series and for many the genre. In this retrospective, let's dive into what Silent Hill 2 does right and wrong, and why even I, a new player 22 years after its release, love this game as much as I do now. Seriously. This will also tee up the eventual comparison for the release of the Silent Hill 2 remake being made by Bloober Team at the time of this recording. And if you like this video and want more content like it, be sure to subscribe to the channel. So, without further ado, let's wander into the horror that is Silent Hill 2.
Why should I? Wait, there's something I gotta get.
Later, okay?
But it's really important.
What is it?
A letter from Mary.
Huh?
I wanna go get it, is that okay?
Yes.
Come on, hurry up.
Is it in there?
There's a concept used in storytelling known as the cold open, essentially thrusting the viewer into the middle of a series of events, that which will be explained later. See this action in all forms of media, from YouTube videos, TV shows like Breaking Bad, and even some video games like Tears of the Kingdom, or in this case, Silent Hill 2. We open with our protagonist, James Sunderland, standing in a dilapidated bathroom, staring into a mirror. We are introduced yet again to the camera work of Silent Hill, the centered, seemingly mounted in the grout line between the floor and the tile wall. Mist drifts around the space as James continues staring, his reflection only staring back. He has arrived to the town of Silent Hill, at the beckoning of a letter he received from his late wife who had been dead for 3 years. Obviously confused by how his deceased other can be sending him letters, he heads to Silent Hill, as the letter says she will meet him in their special place. Given the events of the first game, it is hard to see how this place could be special to anyone, but hey, maybe it was nice once. Reflecting on what the player is obviously thinking, that being how could a dead woman send a letter, James leaves his car parked outside of the rest stop and makes his way through the graveyard to the town below. This opening scene for Silent Hill 2 is, in my opinion, masterful in its execution and sets the tone and the stage for the adventure to come. The harrowing dread of the tale that lays before us is palpable, the mist settling in the bathroom, the long stare of James staring at his own reflection, just as deadpan, the dilapidated state of the restroom toilet, forgotten to time. In stepping outside, you again can't see in front of you, the overlook where the car is parked, quiet with only the sound of James' footsteps. The tunnel is blocked into town, so we have to cut the wall, entering a graveyard. Everything in this intro of Silent Hill 2 works in setting up the tone yet to come, as well as the upcoming adventure will be beset upon. The setup does this equally as well, and it predicated on fear, but much like the first game, confusion and mystery, and most importantly, a tale of self-reflection. We head into the graveyard where we find a woman kneeling in front of a tombstone. Her name is Angela Orozco, I probably butchered that, who has come to Silent Hill to looking for her mom. We will discuss more on her character a bit later in the video, as she is just one of the multiple side characters in this game, but even in this first encounter, you can tell there's just something off with her.
It's fog, but there's only the one road. You can't miss it.
Thanks.
But
Yes?
I think you'd better stay away. This town, there's something wrong with it. It's kind of hard to explain, but
Is it dangerous?
maybe. And it's not just the fog either.
Okay,
It's...
I got it. I'll be careful.
I'm not lying.
No, I believe you. It's just, I guess I really don't care if it's dangerous or not. I'm going to town either way.
Deadpan, morose, and seemingly confused, she asks James why she has come to town. And again, the back and forth, James heads off into the town proper. Again, the introduction to Angela here is intentional, as it seems that people come to this town for one reason or another, but no one seems to be happy about it. Everyone here is looking for something or someone, whether it's a loved one or even themselves. She warns James that there's something wrong with the town, dangerous, and recommends that he doesn't go in. James ignores his warnings, needing answers regarding his late wife, and makes his way into the town of Silent Hill. It is here that once again we need to discuss the setting of this game and the entire series of Silent Hill as a whole. If you've ever driven to the back roads of the Appalachia, through the rural parts of central United States, or just on the back roads of wherever you live, chances are you've probably seen a town like Silent Hill, a town abandoned to time due to either economic strife, job migration, disaster, or just abandoned. There is an eerie feeling in these ghost towns, an unsettling feeling of a once potentially vibrant place now falling into slow dilapidation, succumbing to rust and rot. If you've ever seen or been to one of these places, you know the feeling, the unease that comes with it, and the inherent sadness that lives within. Silent Hill as a setting has much of the same feeling, and for a horror game, this works to a large degree as to the unsettlement throughout the entire runtime of this game. Yes, there are monsters to kill, tension builds from the radio, but it is in the quiet moments of Silent Hill, wandering the abandoned halls of a hotel or of the lakeside resort, where the true eeriness is instilled. Everywhere you look, there is a state of rot within this town, abandoned, and it is here that James must find his wife and thus himself. As James makes his way through the town that once was a special place for him and his wife, there's a dichotomy as well here. James remembering when the town was a vibrant resort, now fallen on hard times and completely isolated from the rest of the world, an other world of sorts, and I don't mean the actual other world either. Exploring numerous locations here, the resort, the apartment buildings, the local watering hole and bowling alleys, the world of Silent Hill also feels well realized, further enhanced by the notes and drawings all over the place, giving the player a sense of the town itself and the inner workings before its abandonment. Further expanding on Silent Hill, Team Silent did the very thing I also praised Capcom for doing in its original run of Resident Evil games, that being making the main location a well-realized place. Essentially a character of sorts, with a lot more explorable spaces, notes of the past, and different interactions that can take place in some of these. Konami did a great job at fleshing out the world of Silent Hill, while keeping the unsettling nature of the town intact. This is further compounded with the reintroduction of the other world, much like the original being the same areas we were just in, but this time a world of rust, death, blood, and darkness. Much like the original, this shift in world design brings its own confusion to the world layout to keep both James and the player on their toes, with newly locked doors, notes, and puzzles to contend with, a touch that I love in all of these games thus far. It is easy to see a mechanic where you go through the same world twice of an area that really could be frustrating and boring, but Silent Hill manages to change the world enough to make this feel tense, littering the world with monsters, body bags, rust, and decay, a facsimile we will return to in a bit. With this game being on PlayStation 2, the added power of the new console definitely added to all of that and above, and I'm glad to see that the fog makes its return as well. Done for seemingly technical limitations originally, it aided a ton in the factor of the unknown, shrouding your path forward in mystery, and with monsters and creatures littering the streets, again adds to the unsettlement Team Silent is seemingly always looking to achieve. In terms of gameplay, the formula is essentially the same as the original, that being tank controls to account for static camera angles, some basic combat with melee and a couple of firearms, and a larger emphasis on puzzles, this time being a bit harder than the original. While Silent Hill 2 is, fun, it is relatively simple in its mechanics and interactions, and without much built upon this, I feel like that should say enough about how much this game is built around its core mechanics, and how stellar this game is on a writing and narrative front. The other massive improvement in this game is the creature design, so let's take a look at the monstrous monstrosities that exist in the world of Silent Hill 2. I think it's safe to say that visually, early 3D doesn't hold up nearly as well as its 2D contemporaries. It is here that in hindsight, I felt like the creatures of Silent Hill 1 to be a bit lacking. And while visuals aren't everything, it's hard to make something demorphed and horrifying when everything looks like a brown and red blob, which seems to be where the reliance on the nurses, moths, worms, and dogs stem from. They're recognizable, have a differential in profile, and make the creatures actually are easier to read. Silent Hill 2, however, steps the game up a ton in its inherent design of the monsters of Silent Hill, short of the biggest monster of them all, which we will get into when it comes to the plot. I'm talking about James. When entering the town for the first time, we are introduced to the main creature we're going to be fighting, the lying figure, a humanoid enemy devoid of arms and spits caustic acid at James as he runs by. The writhing of the creature, the lean back before he spits, and its vague resemblance to a body bag made of flesh makes this thing all the more horrifying. This is the very first enemy we're introduced to after James follows a blood trail leading to a back-end alley and a dead end at a tunnel, where he beats one of these to death with a pipe. Compared to the base enemies of Silent Hill 1, that being the flying screechers and the dogs, these fodder enemies serve to continuously be a reminder of the otherworldly manifestations that would appear throughout this game. And this concept continues with all the creatures of Silent Hill, from the mannequins, a creature with appendages that seemingly go in every which way, through pure distortion of the human body, as well as its jerky movements and attacks, are unsettling creatures to run into, solely due to the fact that they are just wrong to look at. The nurses return yet again, this time far more creepy in their herky-jerky movements, something which is notorious for Japanese horror like The Ring or The Grudge. From the Mandarin, abstract daddies, and box of flesh, every creature in Silent Hill serves the same purpose. Take something humanish and dysmorph it in unnatural ways to be conspicuously unsettling. However, there's one standout creature of this game, one that has broken past the nice world of horror games and has come into the overall horror lexicon in a fantastic way. That creature being Pyramid Head. First meeting him in the Woodland Apartments, as well as our first major boss encounter, it's easy to see why this creature was so iconic. Humanesque and distinctly inhuman at the same time, there is a lot to love about the design of Pyramid Head, or in translated Japanese, Red Pyramid Thing, and the human proportions donning the butcher smock and the distinct metal pyramid bolted onto its head. It is one of the toughest creatures in the game, wielding an oversized sword or spear. It appears time and time again in the runtime of Silent Hill 2. In keeping with the theme thus far, these are humanoid creatures, but in its distortion becomes a monster. While I do think he's maybe the least terrifying creature of this game, I could see why he's the most distinctive and iconic. While all the creatures in the hellscape that is Silent Hill 2 do their job at both being obstacles for James as well as the player, as well as creep the ever-living shit out of you and me, there are more to these creatures than meets the eye, and much like the rest of the game, there is a layer deeper to the meaning behind them. While creepy and horrifying, these creatures also serve as manifestations to the inner turmoil James is going through, a peek into his psyche and how he's dealing with the trauma of his late wife and the events leading up to that, which we will get into more once again in the narrative portion of this video. The nurse is self-explanatory, as James' wife was terminally sick before her passing. The lying figure, a manifestation of memory of his sick wife, writhing in agony. Pyramid Head, the manifestation of James's guilt and desire for punishment, as well as sexual frustration, as the first two times we meet this monster, it is, well, doing the deed with one of these mannequins like it's a hard plastic blow-up doll. While on the surface these monsters do their job, which is to obviously creep you out and frighten you, Silent Hill 2 is a masterclass of meaning behind the madness, something which we will continue to explore when we get further into the narrative section. So I feel like we're kicking the can down the road over and over again, as this will undoubtedly be the longest section of this video. Let's just go ahead and get right into it. Let's get into the story and meaning behind Silent Hill 2.
What? I didn't do anything. I swear. He was like this when I got here.
My name's James. James Sunderland.
Eddie.
Eddie. Who's that dead guy in the kitchen?
I didn't do it. I swear I didn't kill anybody.
Before we hop into the narrative portion of this video, I do want to bring up the fact that the story of Silent Hill 2 does touch on some pretty graphic and mildly concerning subjects. So just know that going in, and we are going to be spoiling the shit out of this game. So if you haven't played it up to this point, I highly recommend you just go and play it yourself and then kind of come back. Before we continue the story where we left off, I want to lay out the format for this section going forward, as there is a lot here and a lot of interpretation needed for a game like this. So first, we will go through the plot of the game, what we do, where we go, who we interact with, and the like. After that, we will go deeper, analyzing the story, the meanings and underlying themes that permeate Silent Hill 2. So without further delay, let's begin. We left off with James entering the town of Silent Hill, but it's not how he remembers. A once vibrant lakeside town resort, we find the town abandoned to time, streets destroyed, and no humans to be seen. We head up to the street, seeing a trail of blood leading into an alleyway, and naturally, James decides to follow. At the end, we meet a creature shrouded in fog, the lying figures we spoke of earlier, and after grabbing a pipe off the ground, James dispatches the creature and continues back to the resort, where he believes is his and Mary's special place. However, the street is blocked. James cuts through the woodside apartments to get past the blockage and keep pressing forward. While exploring, we will meet our other three characters here. Our first, Eddie Dombrowski, we meet as he is vomiting near a dead body, being real defensive that he is not responsible for it and that he just found the room in this state. Leaving him, we eventually run into Angela again. We are met with a rendered cutscene of her lying on the floor with a knife contemplating suicide. This scene, for lack of a better word, is inherently disturbing, as up to this point in gaming, it's hard to think of another game that began to tackle a dark topic such as this. Maybe that just comes down to my age, but even in going back to old classics like these, nothing comes to mind. James talks her down, taking the bloody knife from her as she cryptically asks if James is afraid of death, and that they are both doomed to perish. Angela takes her leave, and we are left to take this knife with us through the rest of the game. We also meet a girl named Laura, who steps on our hand as we try to grab a key, and although we'll get to know more about her later. Crossing over to the next apartment building, we are met with the all too familiar blare of the sirens of the world of Silent Hill shifts into the other world. Chain link fences, rusted metal, chain link paneling, and razor wire litter the area. The world thrusts into darkness, and the monsters more aggressive. James makes his way through the building to find a way out. We also get our first encounter with Pyramid Head here, spotting him and his mannequin from afar. James decides to hide in a locker nearby as he passes. I do wish he was more of a looming threat in this area, similar to Nemesis, but he does make another appearance as we leave the apartments, being the final encounter for this area before the sirens blare once more and the world shifts back to a normal one. Heading back to the street, we meet Laura again, sitting on a wall outside the building. After a spat back and forth, James being frustrated with her running from him and stepping on his hand, she claims to know Mary, ending the conversation claiming James never loved her to begin with. Heading into the nearby Rosewater Park, James runs into our final character, Maria, who he, for obvious reasons, mistakes her for his late wife. Is eerily similar in look, but in personality is nothing alike. She is at first dismissive of James until he tries to leave, in which she clings to him, wanting to go with James further into town, using the monsters as a reason for her to stay with him for protection, which makes sense given the monsters that roam the streets of this town now. We head to the center of town, exploring a gas station, the historical center, and lastly the bowling alley. Maria refuses to go inside, claiming it's because of her hatred of the sport, and James heads inside, running into Laura again, who makes a break for it as soon as she sees him.
Eddie?
Oh, you're...
James. We met in the apartment building?
Yeah, I remember, but...
Are you alone here, Eddie?
No.
Bye-bye.
Wait! Come back! Eddie, let's go after her.
Huh? Laura? But why?
Laura. Is that her name?
Eddie is in here too, telling James her name and that she had run away to the town before she called him a gutless fatso and because he eats lots of pizza. Giving chase, James meets up with Maria, who points to where she saw Laura run, and the pair cut through the nightclub and head to the Brookhaven Hospital. Entering, Maria and James split up as he has suddenly become sick and lays down in the empty hospital bed. James continues his search for Laura and upon finding her, explodes at her in a fit of rage due to her running and obvious lies about knowing Mary.
Laura?
Huh? You know my name?
Eddie told me.
That big fat blabbermouth.
How do you know about Mary?
What's the big deal?
Why can't you just tell me?
You gonna yell at me if I don't?
No, I won't.
I was friends with Mary. We met at the hospital. It was last year.
You liar! Laura,
Fine, don't believe me.
But last year, Mary was already...
Laura claims to have known Mary for the last year, and as the two go to leave, she tells James that there's a letter in the room that he might want to read, and subsequently locks him in the room full of, you guessed it, monsters. Flesh slips to be exact, the giant boxes that snatch James up by the neck. After their defeat, the world shifts again, going back to the other world once again, rust and decay taking hold.
Laura?
Okay, I guess I won't open it. I think I'll just leave you like this.
You snotty little brat! Open up!
Why, you...
Laura?
You fuckers!
Darkness setting in, and more shifted nurses and the like emerge to play. Again, the hospital becomes a maze, but as we reach the room where we left Maria, we find it empty. Bottles spilt everywhere, drained of their contents. Making his way to the basement, James finds Maria again, who berates him for leaving her, accusing him of not caring for her and only for his dead wife, which is odd.
Sorry. Anyway, I'm glad you're alive.
Anyway? What do you mean, anyway? You don't sound very happy to see me. I was almost killed back there. Why didn't you try to save me? All you care about is that dead wife of yours. I've never been so scared in my whole life. You could.
Making their way out the basement, our boy Pyramid Head shows up yet again, and in the chase, Maria is slaughtered by the creature as James makes his way out. Saddened by the sudden loss, he returns his focus to finding Mary, and finding a key to the historical center, heads back up through the town square to reach the said place, still shifting in the underworld. In it, we see a painting, one that looks ominously familiar to Pyramid Head, surrounded by bodies. And heading through the building, and a large cavernous hole, ends up in the prison and subsequently the lower levels, known as the Labyrinth. Upon entering one of the many rooms in the maze, James can find the broadsword carried by Pyramid Head, only to run into him again, this time armed with a spear on the lower level. This part really isn't important to the story, but it really took me off guard to find him in this area, which gave me a spurt of Nemesis vibes with him chasing you around. Entering the visitation room, we find Maria, still alive, and James becomes confused, having seen her just gutted from stem to stern. She claims that they were simply separated, and as James makes his way around to free her, finds her once again murdered. James also finds a newspaper clipping where we learn more about Angela, who has been strangely absent at this time, describing her as having murdered her father due to repeated acts of sexual abuse, with her mother doing nothing to help. We soon enter a room surrounded by flesh and protruding pistons and see Angela sitting on the ground while a monster hovers over her. Killing it, James attempts to help Angela to her feet, yet she pulls away.
Are you okay? Angela, relax.
Don't order me around!
I'm not trying to order you.
So what do you want then? Oh, I see. You're trying to be...
Attacking the corpse of the monster violently, smashing a TV over its dead body, and begins to accuse James of only being nice to her and attempts to have sex with her, comparing James to her abusive father. Suddenly, however, the conversation flips, as she asks James if his wife was dead. She accuses him of finding someone else anyway, while she was sick, and that he didn't want her anymore to begin with, and leaves the room. James attempts to protest, but peters out, a telling sign of things to come. Leaving near the end of the labyrinth, James enters a meat locker, this time finding Eddie inside, wielding a gun over a body while taunting it. It seems that he finally snapped, and we learn a lot about Eddie in this scene, how he murdered the dog of a football player who bullied him in school, shot that same boy in the leg, and threatens to kill the next person to make fun of him. James, in an interesting tactic here, calls Eddie nuts, and true to his word, begins to try to kill James for this. Murdering Eddie in self-defense, James reels over the fact that he has now killed another human and wonders if the entire series of events had been a fabrication up to this point, the letter that Mary having sent becoming blank, alluding to there never being a letter to begin with. Exiting the area, James enters a rowboat and sets sail for the lighthouse. Under it, the resort that used to be his and Mary's special place. Upon entering the resort, James once again meets Laura, who gives James the letter that she tricked him with earlier. It is a letter saying that Mary is said to adopt Laura from the orphanage she ran away from, but the timing doesn't make sense to James. At the end of the letter, Mary wishes Laura a happy 8th birthday. So when James asks how old Laura actually is, we find out that she just turned 8 a week ago. There's definitely something off here. James makes his way to the room him and Mary used to stay at while they were at the resort, room 312. Finding a videotape left behind by the couple and locating the key to said room, James enters to find the room in the same state it was when they left. Watching the tape,
Are you taping again? Come on. I don't know why, but I just love it here. It's so peaceful. You know what I heard? This whole area used to be a sacred place. I think I can see why. It's too bad we have to leave. Please promise you'll take me again, James.
James is met with the cruel realization of what he did to his wife. It starts off like any normal vacation footage, until it's interrupted by a distorted scene of James smothering his terminally ill wife to death with a pillow. Seeing this, James is left speechless, suppressed memories of the event flooding back to him. Laura enters the room wanting to leave the hotel and keep looking for Mary. James unloads his regret on Laura, who runs away, for obvious reasons.
You find Mary? If not, let's get going already, okay?
Laura. Mary's gone. She's dead.
Liar, that's a lie!
No, that's not true.
She died because she was sick?
No, I killed her.
You killer! Why'd you do it? I hate you!
It's a somber scene, the entire crescendo of what we've been working up to, putting into question everything we've witnessed thus far. The radio crackles to life, Mary's voice on the other end.
That voice.
Telling James he is close to finding her, and now resolved to close this chapter, James enters the hotel yet again, this time dilapidated, burnt, caused by the fire of the hotel years ago. In the exploration, we meet Angela one last time in a staircase consumed with fire. Flanked by two disturbing corpses, Angela once again asks for the knife in order to end her own suffering, to which James refuses. Ascending the flaming stairs, James makes an astute observation of the room being, quote-unquote, hot as hell. He never seemed to be the brightest tool in the shed. To which Angela replies, "For me, it always is," and climbs the stairs until out of sight, corpses in tow. Returning to the lobby, we find Maria once more, bound to the chair and screaming as the pyramid heads murder her another time.
I was weak. That's why I needed you. Needed someone to punish me for my sins. But that's all over now. I know the truth. Now it's time to end this.
Realizing why they exist in the first place, James moves and defeats both of the monsters, ending with the two impaling themselves on their own spears. In the hallway, we hear conversations between Mary and James, hearing their relationship becoming strained as Mary's illness progressed, her yelling at James, calling herself not worthy of flowers from her husband, ending with her pleading with James to be with her no matter what. It is here that the endings begin to delineate, much like how they did in Silent Hill 1. Which ending you get is contingent on certain aspects of the gameplay, and it is here that we also see much debate about which is the quote-unquote canon ending. The first ending, known as Leave, we find a woman who looks a lot like Mary, only to find out that it's Maria once again, in a last attempt to get James to be with her and quit looking for his dead wife. After rebuking these attempts for the last time, Maria transforms to the final boss, a woman demonic and bent in unnatural ways while saddled to a frame, and upon her defeat, once again, as this boss is pretty easy, the scene fades. Upon reopening, this time, James sitting at the bedside of Mary. The two reconcile their past, James admitting to have smothered her for selfish reasons, wanting her out of the way and move on with his life.
James.
Forgive me.
I told you that I wanted to die, James. I wanted the pain to end.
That's why I did it, honey. I just couldn't watch you suffer. No. That's not true. You also said you didn't want to die. The truth is, I hated you. I wanted you out of the way. I wanted my life back.
James, if that were true, then why do you look so sad?
To put her, and more importantly, himself out of their misery due to the lashing out of his wife, his doing, as well as the stress of a loved one becoming terminally ill, and with the vast amounts of stress and care that comes along with that, could make anybody resentful. However, there is still a sense of guilt in James, as Mary asks if he truly hated her and wanted her out of the way, why he continued to look so sad about her death. Handing him a letter, she tells James to move on with his life, letting her go, and again, we fade to black. Opening back up with the cemetery we walked through at the very beginning. Mary's letter begins to be read in the background. This letter, and I say this as a 33-year-old man, about brought me to tears, lamenting on her actions when Mary was told she was going to die, relenting the fact that James seemed disgusted and angry at her whenever he saw her, changing tone to apologizing for her actions, relishing the life they had spent together, and that she always loved him, and wanted him to be happy, wanting him to move on, but pained at the potential of him forgetting her. I'm just gonna let it play here, as it's said more beautifully than I can actually encapsulate. I went and hugged my wife after beating this game.
In our special place, waiting for you. Waiting for you to come to see me. But you never do. And so I wait, wrapped in my cocoon of pain and loneliness. I know I've done a terrible thing to you. Something you'll never forgive me for. I wish I could change that. But I can't. I feel so pathetic and ugly laying here, waiting for you. Every day I stare up at the cracks in the ceiling, and all I can think about is how unfair it all is. The doctor came today. He told me I could go home for a short stay. It's not that I'm getting better. It's just that this may be my last chance. I think you know what I mean. Even so, I'm glad to be coming home. I've missed you terribly.
I'm afraid, James. I'm afraid you don't really want me to come home. Whenever you come see me, I can tell how hard it is on you. I don't know if you hate me or pity me, or maybe I just disgust you. I'm sorry about that. When I first learned that I was going to die, I just didn't want to accept it. I was so angry all the time, and I struck out at everyone I loved most. Especially you, James. That's why I understand if you do hate me. But I want you to know this, James. I'll always love you. Even though our life together had to end like this, I still wouldn't trade it for the world. We had some wonderful years together. Well, this letter has gone on too long, so I'll say goodbye. I told the nurse to give this to you after I'm gone. That means that as you read this, I'm already dead. I can't tell you to remember me, but I can't bear for you to forget me. These last few years since I became ill, I am so sorry for what I did to you, did to us. You've given me so much, and I haven't been able to return a single thing. That's why I want you to live for yourself now. Do what's best for you, James. James, you made me happy.
The second ending, and the one that I received, is in water, where the beginning is still much of the same until we reach Mary's room. Here we have the same speech from James about wanting Mary out of the way. However, this time, Mary coughs and dies once more. James, overcome with guilt, picks up the body and leaves the room, fading to black once more, with James coming to terms with why he came into the town in the first place, and we are met with Mary's letter again, but this time underwater. According to the novelization of Silent Hill 2, James loads Mary up into the car and drives it into the water, killing himself in order to be with Mary again. The guilt of murdering his wife being too much and being lost without her anymore.
Now I understand the real reason I came to this town. I wonder, what was I afraid of? Without you, Mary, I've got nothing.
The next ending, dubbed Maria, sees the biggest change of these three. This ending is achieved predominantly through spending time with Maria as much as possible, and upon reaching the roof, we are met with Mary this time. Mary asks James why he wasn't quicker, why he was spending so much time with Maria rather than rushing to be with her again. Mary then asks if she could ever forgive James for what he did and transforms. And upon her defeat fading to black, we find James back at the park where he first met Maria. She asks him if he killed Mary again, and the two profess to want to be together, leaving Silent Hill again, together to be an item. After Mary's letter, Maria begins coughing, and James says that she should get that checked out, leading to the inference that history may in fact be repeating itself. And wrapping up this ending, we have 3 more. 2 of them more joke endings, and one being of some import. However, I don't feel that this is nearly in run of being the canonical ending. After the fight with Boss Maria, James takes the body of Mary, and if having collected a number of items around town, puts her in a rowboat, taking her to the island in the middle of the lake in order to resurrect his late wife. While an interesting concept, the fact that this can't be achieved without having beat the game once over already makes this feel more like an Easter egg, or rather than a real ending in and of itself. We also have another UFO ending, seeing Harry take James up with him as well, and the last one being an ending where you learn that a corgi has been controlling the entire simulation the entire time. As I said, more jokey, but I would be remiss if we didn't talk about it here, at least bringing it up. And that wraps up the story, but there's still a ton more to cover, like what it all means and why this story actually hits so damn hard. Now, there are a ton of theories online as to the events of Silent Hill 2, as this game is more open to interpretation than most, which is probably why it's so well regarded in the first place. These are just my own takes on the matter, so let me know your thoughts as well in the comments down below. James, having murdered his wife by smothering her, has not come to grips with what's actually happened, due to the stress and trauma leading up to the events. Coming to Silent Hill is more of a tale of James coming to terms with the actions he committed and why he did it in the first place. As we play through the game, the letter that is brought to us to Silent Hill begins to fade away, the letter disappearing entirely after James has finally had the revelation of what he actually did, that being killing his wife. Silent Hill is a town that is able to manifest the worst in people, which is why the town has had such an effect on both Angela and Eddie as well. Eddie having also murdered other humans and fucking dogs, this monster, and Angela coming to terms with murdering her father due to the multiple counts of sexual abuse she endured. As both can see the monsters and have their own quote-unquote other worlds, it's clear that Silent Hill is having the same effect on them as it is on James. However, Laura is an exception. Being an innocent 8-year-old, the town has no effect on her, as there are no inner demons to pull out of her, hence why we never see her in the other world either. In terms of Maria, it seems fairly obvious that she's a manifestation of the town itself, the ideal woman for James, in order to test his loyalty to his wife. As the main protagonist of an additional scenario, born from a wish, she may also be a manifestation of the desire for James to see his wife again, explaining why she greatly resembles Mary in both face as well as voice. Seeing her murdered time and time again by Pyramid Head seems to be another form of punishment for James, watching a woman who resembles his wife die time and time again, as he works to come to grips with his own murdering of Mary. However, at the crux of it all is the reasoning of James to murder Mary. I've read things online distilling down James's reasoning to wanting his desire for freedom, his desire for lust, and to be separated from his terminally ill wife to live his own life selfishly. I just can't agree with the sentiment. And while I do think there might be a small nugget of truth in there, to come to this conclusion would be to ignore the entire dynamic of their relationship. At the end, we can see James struggle to come to terms with what he did, attempting to justify it by saying he didn't want her to be in pain any longer, to let her go rather than see her suffer. However, he also admitted to doing so out of anger as well, something Mary admits to in the ending letter, where she admits that she lashed out at him constantly at everyone, but most of all him. She admits to treating him like garbage, yelling at him for bringing him flowers, which we hear in the walk up in the hallway to the final boss room, and in the same note, asking him never to leave her. This dynamic would be hard on anyone, and here we can see the struggles both have. James attempting to stay kind and faithful in their relationship, while contending with the fact that he also feels trapped in the situation that seems inevitable, which would breed contempt as well as pity. I mean, you hear about your wife that is going to die no matter what you guys try to do. That's going to take a toll on anybody, not just the single person who is having the main issue, although it does affect them the most. Mary, being told that she was going to die, lashed out in any way she knew how, to those closest to her. A justifiable reaction when being told that your life is ending, once again, no matter what you do. There's a failure to communicate here, to come to grips as a unit in their situation, and that is really what leads the entire ordeal in the first place. And while I don't feel like that would ever justify smothering your wife to death, I could see how someone could reach that conclusion, albeit a very extreme one. It is a sad ending to a horrible situation, which is why I like to think that Silent Hill has stuck around as a classic in horror and storytelling as long as it has. This game does not spoon feed you all the details, allowing the player to come up with their own conclusions and justifications on their own, rather than tell the player what was going through the protagonist's head at the time. Silent Hill brought James here to repent for his sins, to come to terms with his guilt, and depending on the ending you get, resolves in a number of ways. Whether that be James moving on with his life, moving on with Maria, doomed to be in the same scenario as before, or to end his own life, overcome with the guilt of what he has done. There's a part of me that thinks that most people's canonical ending would be the one that they naturally got, which goes for me as well. There is something somber and beautiful about the in-water ending. James taking the body of his late wife and driving into the water in order to be together again, ending his own life rather than move forward alone, now that he's come to grips with what he did. Silent Hill 2, in my opinion, is a must-play game for most people, even if you're not into horror. The way the narrative unfolds, the clues handed out along the way, and the ability for the player to make their own inferences as to what actually happens in this game is masterfully done, and I have not had a game stick with me for as long as this one has. It took me a long time to write this script, and in conclusion, I'm still not sure I'm giving this game enough justice that it deserves. While a Lumi remake is on the way, you best believe I will be playing through that as well, and definitely going to be doing a video on it after completion. But I want to hear from you guys. What did you guys think of Silent Hill 2? Am I off base in my deductions, and am I just rambling on like an insane idiot? Let me know in the comments down below. Sorry this video took so long to get out. I will be getting on to Silent Hill 3 and may have some other scattershot videos along the way as well, so look out for those. Thank you for your time. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video and share it with a friend. Until next time, my name is Brendan, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.
Someone.
Who is it?
Someone very important to me. I'd do anything if I could be with her again.
Me too. I'm looking for my mama. I mean my mother. It's been so long since I've seen her.